Emma Carter never thought her quiet life in Portland would take such an emotional turn. At 42, she had grown used to calm evenings, cooking dinner for her husband David, and tending to her small garden on weekends. Her days followed a gentle rhythm, predictable, peaceful, and a little lonely. David worked long hours managing a construction firm, often coming home too tired to talk. It wasn't a bad marriage. It was just quiet, almost too quiet. Then, one autumn afternoon, David told her that his son, Ethan, would be moving in for a while. Ethan was his son from a previous marriage, 22 years old, fresh out of college. And trying to find his footing in life? Emma had met Ethan several times before during holidays or family events and had always liked him. He was polite, thoughtful, and carried a quiet intensity in his eyes. When Ethan arrived, the house suddenly felt different. He brought energy with him, the kind that had long been missing. He greeted Emma warmly, his tone respectful, yet familiar. "It's good to be back," he said with a small smile. "Feels strange not being at school anymore." Emma welcomed him with open arms. "You'll figure things out," she said kindly. "Everyone does, eventually." The days began to change after that. Ethan would often join her in the kitchen, offering to chop vegetables or help with dishes. He asked about her cooking, her plants, even her favorite books. He listened not absent-mindedly, but with real attention. It was something Emma hadn't felt in a long time. At first it was just small talk, but soon their conversations deepened. Ethan talked about feeling uncertain how hard it was to find a purpose after college. How strange it was to see all his friends moving forward while he stood still. Emma related to that feeling more than she expected. She told him about her own fears from when she was younger. The times she had felt invisible in her own home. And the quiet longing that never truly left. Their connection began to grow naturally. There was no intention behind it, just two people finding comfort in understanding each other. Emma realized she was smiling more, laughing at little things again. When David was away for business trips, the evenings didn't feel as long. She and Ethan would sometimes watch old movies together, sitting at opposite ends of the couch, talking through the credits about everything from dreams to regrets. One rainy evening, Ethan returned home later than usual. His clothes were soaked and his mood seemed heavy. Emma noticed it right away. "Rough day?" she asked gently. He sighed, running a hand through his damp hair. "Yeah, I went to another interview today. Didn't go well. They said they'll get back to me, which means they won't." She poured him a cup of tea and motioned for him to sit. "Don't be too hard on yourself. You're still young. Things take time." He looked at her, his eyes tired but soft. "You always make it sound so easy." Emma smiled faintly. "It's not easy, but you learn to trust the process." There was a pause, one that carried a certain stillness neither of them could explain. Outside, the rain drummed softly on the window. Inside, the fire crackled faintly in the corner. Ethan broke the silence first. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course," Emma replied. He hesitated for a moment, as if searching for the right words. "How do you stay so calm, even when things don't go your way?" Emma looked at him for a long moment before answering. "Because I've already lived through the storms. Once you've done that, you stop fearing the rain." Ethan nodded slowly, his gaze lingering on her face as though memorizing her words. "I wish I had your kind of strength," he murmured. That night, Emma found herself thinking about what he'd said. It had been years since anyone had looked at her with that kind of admiration. She told herself it was harmless, just a young man seeking guidance, nothing more. But deep down, she could feel something shifting. Over the next few days, Ethan began spending more time at home. They fell into small routines, morning coffee together before he went job hunting. Dinner in the evenings where they shared stories about the day. One morning, he surprised her by fixing the squeaky kitchen cabinet that had bothered her for months. "Can't have you fighting with that thing every day," he said with a grin. Emma laughed, touched by the gesture. "Thank you, Ethan. I was starting to think it would squeak forever." Later that evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Ethan spoke again. "You know, I've been thinking about something lately," he said. "About wishes. About the things we want but never ask for." Emma tilted her head, intrigued. "And what's your wish?" He hesitated, his expression thoughtful. "Honestly, I wish I could feel like I belong somewhere. Like I'm not just floating from one place to another." Emma felt a pang of empathy. She knew that feeling too well, the quiet ache of not belonging anywhere, even in your own life. "Maybe belonging isn't something you find," she said softly. "Maybe it's something you build with people who care." Ethan looked at her then, his gaze filled with something gentle and searching. "That's what I like about you, Emma. You make things feel steady. You make this house feel like a home." The words stayed with her long after he went inside. That night, lying in bed, Emma couldn't stop replaying them in her mind. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't anything like that. It was emotional, real, human. Someone had finally seen her not as a wife, not as a caretaker, but as a person. A few days later, while David was out of town again, Emma found Ethan sitting alone in the living room. The TV was on but muted. He looked deep in thought. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded slowly, then sighed. "I was thinking about what you said, that belonging is something you build. I think I know what I need to do, but it's not easy." "What is it?" "I need to stop pretending I'm fine," he said. "I keep acting like I have everything figured out, but I don't. I feel like I'm failing at everything, and you're the only one I can talk to about it." Emma felt her heart tighten. She walked closer and sat beside him. "You're not failing, Ethan. You're learning. There's a difference." He turned to look at her. "Then why does it hurt so much?" "Because you care," she answered quietly. "People who care always hurt more, but that's also what makes them stronger." The sincerity in her voice brought a small, grateful smile to his face. "Thank you, Emma, for everything. I don't think I ever said that before." She smiled back, placing a hand on his arm gently. "You don't have to. I already know." The air between them felt warm-filled, not with tension, but with trust. They sat there in silence for a long while, watching the flickering light from the TV dance across the room. Neither of them said much after that, but the moment stayed with them both. That night, Emma lay awake again, thinking about Ethan's words. There was something about his honesty that reminded her of the younger version of herself, the one who used to dream, who used to feel deeply. Somewhere along the way, she had buried that part of her beneath responsibility and routine. Ethan, without even trying, had brought it back as the days passed. Emma found herself more attuned to his moods, the way he smiled when he was proud, the way his shoulders slumped when he felt unsure. She didn't see him as a stepson anymore. She saw him as someone trying to find meaning, someone who needed understanding, and she wanted to help. One evening, while washing dishes together, Ethan said softly, "You know, I think I finally figured out my wish." Emma looked at him curiously. "Oh, what is it this time?" He smiled faintly. "I just wish we could spend more time together. You make things make sense again." For a moment, she didn't know what to say. It was simple, innocent, but it carried weight. She nodded with a small smile. "Then that's something I can say yes to." Ethan looked relieved, even happy. And though she didn't fully understand why, Emma felt a quiet warmth spread through her chest. Maybe that was what she needed, to someone to remind her that saying yes wasn't always dangerous. Sometimes it was the beginning of healing. That night, as rain tapped gently against the window, Emma realized something important. Life's biggest changes don't always start with grand gestures. Sometimes they start with a small, quiet yes. After that rainy evening, the connection between Emma and Ethan grew in ways neither of them fully expected. It wasn't sudden or dramatic, it was quiet, natural, and built in the spaces between ordinary moments. Mornings became a time for shared coffee, their conversations soft but meaningful. Emma noticed that Ethan now lingered longer at the kitchen table, talking about his hopes and fears while she listened carefully, offering guidance without judgment. Ethan, for his part, seemed to open up more than he had with anyone else. He spoke about job applications, about the uncertainty that came with leaving college behind, and about the pressure he felt to find his path. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do," he admitted one morning. rubbing the back of his neck. "It's like everyone else has a map and I'm walking blindfolded." Emma smiled, pouring his coffee. "You don't need a map, Ethan. Sometimes you just need to take small steps and see where they lead." He nodded, staring into the cup as though the warmth could guide him. "It just helps. Talking to you. You make everything feel less heavy." Her heart warmed at his words. There was something profoundly human in the trust he placed in her, and she felt honored. Over the next few days, their time together was filled with small routines that carried big meaning. They cooked dinner together, shared playlists of music they loved, and even went on long walks around the neighborhood. These moments weren't grand gestures, but they created a rhythm that brought comfort to both of them. One afternoon, Ethan suggested a trip to the nearby river park. The air was crisp with the early hints of fall, and the leaves had begun to turn amber and gold. Walking alongside him, Emma felt the tension of her own life soften. He talked about his dreams, his frustrations, and his fears for the future. "I feel like I've been waiting for life to happen to me," Ethan admitted. "But maybe I need to make it happen myself." Emma nodded. "Exactly. You can't wait for life. You create it with your choices, even the small ones." As they reached the riverbank, the wind blew softly and the sunlight sparkled on the water. Ethan paused, watching the reflection of the trees on the rippling surface. "I think I'm starting to understand something," he said quietly. "It's not about being perfect or having all the answers. It's about being willing to face things honestly and keep moving forward." Emma felt a lump in her throat. His words were thoughtful and mature beyond his years. She realized that this young man, who had once seemed uncertain and a little lost, was beginning to find his own strength. And that's all anyone can ask of themselves. She said the day ended with them sitting on a bench, watching the sun sink behind the trees. A quiet understanding had settled between them, one that required no words. It was a sense of trust, of shared space, of two people helping each other heal through simple human connection. Back at home, Emma found herself reflecting on the changes she had noticed in Ethan. He laughed more easily now, carried himself with a little more confidence, and even seemed to enjoy the mundane routines of daily life. She was proud of him not as a mother or a stepmother, but as someone who had watched another person grow. The evenings became their quiet time together. On nights when David was traveling, Emma and Ethan would prepare dinner together, sometimes sharing stories from their day, sometimes sitting in companionable silence. They discovered shared interests: books, music, movies, and even began planning small outings, like trips to the local farmer's market or exploring hiking trails. Each moment deepened their bond. One evening, as they washed dishes side by side, Ethan spoke again. I think I finally understand my wish." Emma looked at him, curious. "And what is that?" He smiled softly, a mixture of relief and uncertainty in his expression. "I just want to feel like I belong somewhere. I want to feel like I'm not invisible, like someone really sees me for who I am." Emma's heart ached at the honesty in his voice. She reached out, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "Ethan, you are seen. You've always been seen. Sometimes it just takes time to recognize it yourself." He nodded, taking a deep breath. "And spending time with you helps. You make everything feel easier, like it's okay to not have everything figured out." That night, Emma lay awake, thinking about their conversations. She realized that the wish Ethan had made, the desire for understanding and closeness, wasn't selfish or inappropriate. It was human, and in a way, fulfilling it had given her something too: a sense of purpose, of connection, and a reminder that even quiet lives can be enriched by meaningful relationships. Days turned into weeks. They continued their routines, but now there was a sense of anticipation in their time together. They had learned to communicate without forcing words, to share moments without agenda, to offer support without expectation. It was a bond built on empathy, respect, and quiet companionship. One Saturday, they visited a small art exhibit in town. Ethan was hesitant at first, unsure if he would enjoy it, but Emma encouraged him. Walking through the gallery, he began to comment on the paintings, noting the emotions they evoked. Emma watched him closely, noticing how engaged he was, how expressive his observations became. "You have a good eye," she said. "I didn't know I could appreciate it like this," he admitted. "I guess I've been too focused on myself lately." Emma smiled. Sometimes appreciating something outside yourself is the best way to understand yourself. They left the gallery feeling lighter, the air crisp and fresh outside. Walking side by side, neither rushed, neither forced conversation. Yet both felt the deepening bond between them. Later that evening, while preparing dinner, Ethan asked if they could cook a new recipe together. Emma agreed, and the process became a lesson in teamwork, patience, and laughter. Flour dusted their hands, pasta boiled over, and yet the joy of simply being together made every little mishap worthwhile. After cleaning up, they sat in the living room with mugs of hot cocoa, the fire crackling softly. Ethan looked thoughtful. "I think I finally understand what you meant about small steps," he said. "Life isn't about one big perfect moment. It's about all the little choices that build who you are." Emma nodded. "Exactly. And sometimes the smallest gestures, listening, sharing time, caring for someone can be the most meaningful." They spent the rest of the night talking. Not about solutions or plans, but about life, hopes, and the kind of people they wanted to be. In those moments, Emma realized that saying yes to Ethan's wish to spend more time together had done more than help him. It had helped her remember that connection, empathy, and emotional honesty were treasures in themselves. A week later, Ethan received a call for a promising internship. Excited but nervous, he shared the news with Emma first. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," he said. Emma placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You are. And whatever happens, you're not alone. You'll learn from it and you'll grow." Ethan smiled, a mixture of relief and gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you for everything. For listening, for believing in me, for saying yes when I didn't even know what I needed." Emma felt a warmth in her chest that she hadn't felt in years. The bond they had built, rooted in trust, respect, and quiet support, was something rare and precious. It wasn't about dependence, nor was it about romantic feelings. It was about human connection at its purest form. That night, as she cleaned up the kitchen, Emma realized the truth. Sometimes, the simplest acts of kindness, saying yes, offering time, listening with care, could transform lives. And in saying yes to Ethan's wish, she had not only helped him find his footing, but had also rediscovered a sense of purpose and fulfillment she hadn't felt in years. As she sat by the window, watching the city lights twinkle, Emma understood that life's unexpected turns could bring the deepest rewards. The quiet evenings, the shared routines, the heartfelt conversations, they were all small miracles in their own way. And she felt ready for whatever the next chapter might bring, knowing that meaningful connection could change everything. By the time autumn had fully settled over Portland, the bond between Emma and Ethan had grown into something deeply comforting. It wasn't sudden or dramatic. It had developed slowly through shared experiences, honest conversations, and quiet companionship. The house no longer felt like a place for routine and silence. It was alive with shared laughter, thoughtful debates, and moments of reflection. Ethan had started his internship at a small marketing firm downtown. He was nervous at first, unsure of his skills, and hesitant to take initiative. Emma noticed the uncertainty in his emails and texts, quick notes asking questions about work-life balance, advice for managing stress, or simply sharing small victories from his day. Each message reminded her of the importance of patience and guidance in human relationships. She responded carefully, offering support without pushing, advice without judgment, and encouragement without pressure. One evening, after his first particularly challenging day at the internship, Ethan returned home feeling drained. Emma had already prepared dinner, the kitchen warm with the scent of roasted vegetables and fresh bread. "Tough day?" she asked gently, setting a plate in front of him. He nodded, sighing as he sank into the chair. "I didn't think I'd be this tired," he admitted. "Everything moves so fast there. I feel like I'm running just to keep up." Emma smiled softly, pouring herself a cup of tea. "That's normal when you're learning. Every step is progress, even if it feels slow." Ethan looked at her, eyes full of appreciation. "I don't think I could do this without having someone like you to talk to." Her heart warmed at his words. It wasn't flattery, it was gratitude, pure and sincere. "You're doing this yourself, Ethan. I'm just here to remind you that you're capable." That night, after dinner, they went for a walk in the crisp evening air. The streets were quiet, the city bathed in soft orange light from the street lamps. Ethan seemed more reflective than usual, his pace slow and deliberate. "You know," he began, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About building your own place in the world. About taking small steps." Emma listened, sensing the seriousness in his tone. And I think I finally understand. It's not about trying to impress anyone or meet some expectation. It's about finding where you feel at home, even if it's just inside yourself at first. Emma nodded, feeling a quiet pride. He was growing not just in career, but as a person. Exactly. Belonging starts from within. Everything else comes later. The days that followed were filled with small victories. Ethan learned to navigate his responsibilities at work with increasing confidence. He came home with stories about successes and challenges alike. Each one shared with Emma over tea or during quiet moments on the couch. Their bond, rooted in empathy and mutual respect, deepened with each conversation. One weekend, Emma suggested a visit to a nearby botanical garden. The leaves had turned vibrant shades of red, gold, and orange. Ethan hesitated at first, worried about his workload, but eventually agreed. As they wandered through the garden, Ethan became animated, pointing out different plants, sharing memories from childhood, and asking Emma questions about her favorite flowers. Emma smiled at his enthusiasm. "You've always been curious," she said. "I guess I just needed a reason to slow down and notice things," he replied. The afternoon passed in peaceful companionship, punctuated by laughter and quiet reflections. Ethan's growing confidence and appreciation for life's simple pleasures reminded Emma of her own younger self, the part of her that had been buried beneath responsibility and routine. Back home. That evening, they made a simple dinner together. Ethan took the lead in chopping vegetables while Emma stirred the sauce. It was a moment of teamwork and shared joy, with no need for words beyond what was necessary. They laughed at small mistakes, offered each other encouragement, and savored the warmth of being together. Later, as they sat by the fire with mugs of tea, Ethan spoke again. "Emma, I think I finally know what I want." Emma tilted her head, curious. "Oh, what is it?" He smiled faintly, a mix of excitement and nervousness in his expression. "I want to be able to face life without fear. I want to grow, make mistakes, learn from them, and not be ashamed of needing help along the way." Emma felt a lump in her throat. "That's a very brave wish, Ethan, and you're already on your way." Over the next few weeks, they continued their routines, but now there was a stronger sense of understanding between them. Ethan no longer needed to seek reassurance constantly. He had started trusting his own judgment, while Emma remained a quiet source of support. They discovered the beauty of mutual respect and the power of emotional honesty. One evening, as David returned from a business trip, he noticed a subtle change in the household. Ethan seemed more confident, more engaged, and Emma radiated a sense of calm and fulfillment that David hadn't seen in months. They exchanged a few polite words, and though David remained oblivious to the depth of Emma and Ethan's bond, he could sense the positive energy that had returned to the home. That night, after David had gone to bed, Emma and Ethan sat in the living room reflecting on recent events. "It's strange," Ethan said softly, "how things change without you noticing at first. One day, everything feels the same, and the next you realize life is moving in a better direction." Emma nodded, smiling. "Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. Sometimes all it takes is a small choice, a simple yes, to change everything." Ethan leaned back, thoughtful. "I'm glad I made that wish. And I'm even glad you said yes." Kima felt a wave of warmth. It wasn't romantic, it was deeper, more meaningful. It was trust, understanding, and emotional closeness, the kind of bond that sustains people through challenges and joys alike. "So am I, Ethan. So am I." As the weeks turned into months, Ethan's growth became more evident. He found a rhythm at work, began pursuing hobbies that interested him, and developed a sense of independence and confidence. Emma felt proud, not as a stepmother, but as someone who had witnessed transformation through patience, empathy, and shared human experience. One quiet evening, they sat together on the porch, the sky painted with the last hues of twilight. Ethan spoke softly. "I think I finally understand what belonging really means. It's not about being with someone else. It's about being at peace with yourself and having people around who truly see you." Emma reached over, placing her hand on his. "Exactly. And you're building that peace every day. I've seen it happen." The house, once quiet and routine, had transformed into a place of warmth, laughter, and connection. Emma realized that the changes weren't about anyone else. They were about the choices they had made. The small gestures of care and attention, and the willingness to be vulnerable. One evening, as they cleaned up the kitchen together, Ethan paused and looked at her seriously. "You know, Emma, you've taught me more than I could have imagined. About life, about patience, about being honest with myself." Emma smiled softly. "And you've reminded me that connection, empathy, and shared understanding are the most important things in life." That night, as she prepared for bed, Emma reflected on the journey. What had started as a simple wish to spend more time together had grown into something profound. It had strengthened Ethan, helped her rediscover her own sense of purpose, and created a bond built on trust, respect, and emotional honesty. Emma understood now that life's greatest changes often came from small choices. Saying yes, offering time, and listening with care could shape lives in ways nothing else could. The warmth she felt in her heart wasn't fleeting, it was the steady glow of meaningful connection. A reminder that sometimes the simplest acts were the most transformative. As she closed her eyes that night, Emma felt peace. She knew that the bond she and Ethan shared was a treasure, one that would guide them both through life's challenges, joys, and uncertainties. And in that quiet, reflective moment, she understood a truth she hadn't realized before. Life's unexpected turns, when met with openness and kindness, could bring the deepest rewards. The story of Emma and Ethan wasn't about romance or drama. It was about growth, trust, and the profound impact that simple human connection could have onto people. Through listening, understanding, and sharing time together, they had created something lasting, a reminder that life's most meaningful moments often came quietly, in the spaces between everyday routines.